What a go on, Dr. AK up in here. And today I'm here to share with you a little something as it concerns self-love. So today I'm going to focus on the 7 keys to self-love that I have been using to steer my life, being in my 40s, ushering into my 50s. One of the things that I've always analyzed or thought about was that my life had to be a specific or a certain type of way in order for me to be successful, right? I needed to have the right job, get the degrees, get the right type of relationship, friendship, house, car, whatever. But you see, God are the biggest comedian, he never really made that happen for me. So you have to start somewhere. So this is where we're going to start, right? So I'm going to share my life story with you, so that you can share your life story with somebody. And just know that God got you no matter how it looked or how it seemed. So today we're going to focus on the 7 keys to self-love. And I want you to know this. If for nothing else you take away this. You have to love yourself before you can love anybody else. And I need for you to understand that point blank. Girl, youth, you have to love you before you can love anybody else. And that's the most imperative thing that you need to take away from all of this. Anyway, if you see me looking down on my phone, I have my notes written down, and that's what I'm going to use to govern the rest of the session. So let's not wait. Let's get to it. So the first key is self-discovery, right? And when we think about self-discovery, in my thought, it's the process of acquiring insight into one's own character. It's the process of getting to know who you are, right? Getting to know yourself. Who is behind that person? What is your makeup, right? What triggers you? Getting to understand who you are, becoming familiar with yourself. Some of the times we don't want to get to know us. And this is why healing is imperative, right? Have you ever heard people jump from relationship to relationship simply because they don't want to deal with the process of healing? That's what we're talking about, self-discovery. You have to get to know who you are so you can heal thoroughly in order to move on to the next level of your life. Understanding your holistic makeup, right? So as human beings, we are made up in 3. Our body, our spirit, our soul. You can call it spiritually, physically, and emotionally. Whichever angle you want to take it from, it's the same thing. When you talk about healing can only take place when all 3 areas of your being is impacted. You cannot heal from a physical perspective only. While it is possible, that's not holistic healing. When you heal, when we talk about healing, is when you heal physically, mentally, and spiritually. That's when healing really takes place. And you know, say, boy, I'm not upset with that person up the street. That person that treat me horribly, but I'm not mad at that person anymore. You can move on and move into your best self, living your best life. So you have to figure out who you are. And we don't like to figure out who we are. And instead of doing that, we do things in the reverse. We try to go and know Tom, Dick, Harry, Mary, Jane, and Sue. And we don't know who we are. So when they're offering us something, we think that, oh my God, this is the best thing since sliced bread. When you're only getting the crumbs from the table. Why? Because you haven't done self-discovery. You don't know who you are. I want that to sink in for a bit, because a lot of us, many of us in this world, if not all, don't know who we are. We haven't discovered ourselves. We haven't discovered what God has said about our life, what the purpose and the plan that God has for us. We haven't discovered it. And because we have not discovered it, society tells us what it is. People tells us what it is, and we move with emotions. Right? We go with emotions simply because we have no clue about who we are. Because we're afraid to take the time to figure it out. You cannot be afraid of who you are. Never be afraid of who you are. Right? When you start to understand you, it makes the process of understanding other people a whole lot better. And for them to understand you and understand what your non-negotiables are. So our second key is self-source. Y'all listen. Ooh, child, listen. This one here is deep, right? For me, when you think about self-source, and I hope you guys are writing these down, right? Because you can always go back and revisit and do your own research too. Don't allow me to tell you. Combine this with the word of God and see what he says about your life, and do your own research and tell me what you come up with in the comment sections below. All right. Self-source is understanding where you are from, where you come from, where you come from. And sometimes we take that just for, oh, I'm from Jamaica, I'm from Cuba, or I am from, wherever. But it's not just that. It's deeper than that. We're talking about your cultural dynamics, right? We're talking about how you were grown, how you were nurtured, how you were cultivated to become who you are now. So analyzing your cultural setting is something that you have to do. What happened when you were growing up as a child? What are some of the things that you saw that you knew within your heart to heart that was right? Like for me, can I share this? When I was growing up, I saw a lot of fighting and arguing in my home. I was a kid, right? So I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know that something was wrong. I would see my father beating everybody else in the house apart from myself and my younger sister. And it didn't sit or feel right with me. But what could I do? I was just a kid. And can I tell you, those were seeds that were being planted, right? Seeds that were being planted. I had no clue, and nobody in the house knew about anything like that from a spiritual perspective. So as I got older, I was very passive growing up, right? I never spoke. I was very naive. But when I got older, I realized that when I got married the first time, I realized that I had anger in me. And I couldn't understand why, because that's not how I remembered myself coming up. But it was there because the seeds were planted. And that kind of held me back in a lot of ways, right? Because of my cultural dynamic. So when you understand these little things that has happened in your past to where you are now, you then start to realize, oh, so this is why I do this. And this is what I need to do. I need to break these generational curses of anger. Because the word of God said, be slow to speak, quick to listen, and slow to anger. That means that anger is not of God, because he speaks about it more than once in his word, that we're not supposed to get angry, right? And I realized that for me, this was my truth. And so I had to go back to where the root of that was, to be able to identify it and now create strategies and techniques to be able to alleviate it with the word of God. So self-source. Where are you from? What was your upbringing like? Right? What did you see growing up that you didn't like, that you realize that it is in you? Because you saw it in your dad, you saw it in your mom, in your brothers and your sisters, cousin, uncle, dog, puss, cat. What is it? Because all of that is going to be the determining factor of who you are now. A lot of times people may think that we're horrible beings. But sometimes it has to do with the things that we have gone through, that we have buried deep, but it's in the subconscious mind. And sometimes when things happen, we resort to using those tools that we have learned in the past to be able to govern where we're going, and it holds us back. So I need for you to figure out your self-source, all right? And be able to identify when you're going off tangent, or you're doing things that are coming from a negative perspective, or you're overdoing things, whichever way that it may. Our third key is self-worth. Listen, this is only getting sweeter and sweeter, right? So self-worth is analyzing your value, right? And I want you to think about these few questions right here. How do you perceive yourself? Woo! Child, this one is deep. How do you see yourself? If you see yourself as being nothing, unaccomplished, if you see yourself as not being smart, beautiful, loving, kind, that's exactly what the world are going to see you. This was my truth. This is how I used to think. I never felt good about myself because nobody taught me how. I never felt that I was beautiful. I never felt like I had value. What was value? I'm a 70s baby. Those things were never taught. Everything in my life I had to learn on my own. I saw myself how people saw me. So if the men saw me as being sexy, then exactly. But I'm sexy. And so they use that to manipulate the situation. I didn't know what love was. I never saw it in my home. I saw fighting and arguing, and that's what became my normality because nobody taught me different. I want you to stop being hard on yourself, right? That's what we're not going to do. We're not going to do that. Find somebody else to do it. We're not going to be hard on ourselves because there are things that we have been taught as a child coming up that's still inside of us that has been normalized that we need to get rid of, but we just don't know how. And I want to teach you here today. And I want you to understand that self-worth is so imperative to your better self, to the being that God has a plan for to prosper, not to harm. So self-worth is very imperative to your next move in life because how we treat ourselves, that's how people are going to treat us. Are you able to recognize your self-worth if you see it? So if you don't have self-worth, you won't be able to see what that looks like, right? So you're going to start valuing you. You're going to start speaking life into you. There's a songwriter that says, sometimes you just have to encourage yourself. I can't sing, but that's the best we can do. Encourage yourself. Start building yourself. Start speaking what the promises of God says about yourself. You're the head, not the tail. Above, not beneath. Start finding scriptures that supports what God says about who you are and not what the world says about you. How do you enhance your self-worth? You enhance your self-worth by continuously encouraging and motivating yourself, speaking life into yourself, speaking the life that the word of God says that you need to speak in yourself, and understanding that when you don't, girl, boy, then the negative will become your truth, will become law. What you say about you is imperative to your next step. Life and death is in the power of the tongue. Speak life. No matter what it is, speak life. It may seem like you cannot or you're not able to get over that hurdle, that thing that happened or whatever the situation, but the devil is a liar. He's a liar. God says that you can. He says that in his word that he will never bring you through to something that you cannot get over. And if it is too heavy for you, he is going to find an escape route for you. That kind of it was a verbatim, but you get the gist, right? God will always find an escape route for you. So don't think that God doesn't have your best interest at heart. You need to have your best interest at heart so that you can work alongside God to make this thing. We are getting there. So we are on number 4, the 4th key to self-love. And this one is self-esteem, y'all. Every single one of us has struggled with this. There's nobody in this world that hasn't struggled with self-esteem. But when you understand self-discovery, self-source, and self-worth, it all ties back into your self-esteem. And I want you to know, y'all, there's greatness in you. There is greatness in you. Let not the enemy whisper lies in your ears. Ask God to silence every voice in your ear, in your head, so that you can only hear him. Right? So when we think about self-esteem, we're looking at the confidence in one's own worth or abilities, self-respect. If you don't know what your worth if you don't know what your worth are, what your worth is, then it's going to be hard for you to identify how to value it and how to move away from where you are into where you need to be. And that's one of the things that we struggle with, right? We struggle with understanding the importance of loving ourselves. I can't speak for myself. Nobody taught me. I never grew up and saw love in my home, right? So when I was entered into a relationship at the age of 18, whatever he told me, it felt good. It made my body shiver. It made my body shiver. And so when I got that feeling, I'm like, okay, this must be love. This must be love. This must be love. And I felt like that was it. And I got accustomed to that, thinking that that was what God had for me, but that was a lie. So when you think about self-esteem, I want you to consider some of these questions. How do you think about and feel about your own qualities? Right? Do you think you're capable, competent, you're effective or efficient in the things that you do? Do you think you're smart? Right? Do you think your skill set, you can take them anywhere to do whatever you need to do? However you think about your qualities determine the outcome. So if you think that you're great and you're the best thing since sliced bread, go ahead, sis. Think about it that way because you're building you. You're encouraging you by whatever means necessary. But if you think you're no good, or you don't have any worth, or I'm not beautiful, whatever the situation is, if you think they're your qualities that you possess, if you know what those qualities are, if you think they are not worthy of anything, that's exactly what you're going to exude. And we want to be careful of that. How do you think and feel about your characteristics? Now, our character speaks volume, right? And the ristics part is everything else that comes with that. So you want to make sure, say, your character, you understand that. You know what you possess. You know what's deep rooted and seated in you to be able to share that with the wider world. You have to understand that, right? Because the more you understand what your character is, the better your characteristics become. Have you thought about the conditions or situations that deflate your esteem? Listen, child, listen, whatever it is that causes you to feel a specific type of way in a specific season or room or wherever, you need to fix it. You can't fix it. Trust and believe you can fix it. If people have been speaking down to you from a child coming up and you're working in an environment where your boss might be doing the same way and you take it to heart, whatever the situation is, it's actually, I'm not going to say that you have bosses who are not rotten in their disposition, but sometimes, more often than not, it has to do with you and what you have encountered. So you need to fix it. And I want you to think about some of these things, because guess what? It helps to build your self-esteem, and that's the aim of the goal. We have to get bigger and stronger no matter what the situation is. We are overcomers by the word of God. Don't leave me yet. We're on key number 5, right? And we only have 2 more to go, so don't walk away from me yet. Don't leave me, girl. Don't leave me, boy. We have some more to go. All right. Listen, I can't sing for nothing, but at least we feel happy doing it, right? So our 5th key today is self-concept. We have to understand this. So let me break it down for you. Self-concept is how we perceive our behaviors, abilities, and unique characteristics and the responses of others. Child, listen. Now we're stemming from the 4th key, right? Into this 5th one. Now we spoke about characteristics and character back there. This is now looking at how you view yourself from a holistic perspective and the responses from others. So these are a few questions I want you to think about as I get into it. Does the response of others matter to you? Now, I'm not going to say that people's response not supposed to matter, but sometimes you have to pick and choose where you want out of the basket. Because all of the fruits, everything might not be edible for eat. For the Jamaican people, then. Everything might not be edible to eat. And we want to make sure that whatever it is that we're picking up is something that's going to benefit our overall being. So, if people are speaking negative things over you or saying, you're whatever the situation might be, you have to pick and choose what you want. Take the negative, throw it back, and take what you can take from the positive to help build you. And if within the negative, you can find something that can build you, use it. But if not, give it back, right back to the sender. How do you envision your roles in life? You need to really think about this one, yeah? How do you envision your roles in life? It's kind of asking, what is your purpose? Why you're here? What are you about to do since you're here? These are some of the things that we have to kind of dissect and understand so we can make better decisions as we move along. How do you feel about your interaction with the world? Are you an optimist or a pessimist? Which category you find yourself into? Because one of the things that we have to understand is interacting with the wider world is a must, right? By one means or the next. We have to interact with people. We have to interact with the wider world, as they say. So how do you feel about that? Are you drawn into yourself? Do you feel like you're not good enough? You feel like you can't stand up in a room, especially if you're Black, to do what you need to do with a confidence? Head up, chest out, to do what you need to do? Listen, if that's the case, and you're struggling with that area, you need to check and analyze why, because it didn't just happen. It started from somewhere. Find the root and fix it. What thoughts and ideas have you constructed about you? Listen, we can tell lie on ourselves, you see? Can I tell you something? We are our biggest enemies. And we We'll stop ourselves first before anybody else does it. I want you to understand this. Nothing that you want to accomplish in this life, as long as it's in the will of God, is hard to accomplish. Whether it be self-love, whether it be whatever it is that you want to work on and to do, from your personal being to your professional context, it is attainable. So what have you spoken or constructed in your mind about yourself? You probably haven't spoken it, but you start believing it in your mind, right? Once you start believing something about yourself or about anything, it becomes law in your mind, and then you start uttering it out of your mouth. So change the way you think. Ask God to renew your mind, to help you think on things that are good, for God to remind you from where he's taking you from to where you are, so that you are able to become what it is that you need to become. So stop thinking less of yourself, right? Start thinking more bigger things, greater things, and just step into the authority of that and say, girl, slay, guys, slay, and allow God to do the rest. Listen, we're called to live a loving, awesome, peaceful life. But if we don't understand the concept of that, we're going to live the life that the enemy says. So we need to change course and make sure so we're on the wagon that God is steering and driving, and not the one of the world. So think good things about yourself, man. We're getting to it. We're getting to it. Yes, we are on the 6th key. And this key speaks about self-identity. Look here. If we look into the world as it is today, a lot of people are struggling with identity issues from a sexual perspective, a personal perspective, a professional perspective. Why is this? Because one, we don't know who we are. Two, we refuse to accept who God says that we are, and how God has made and created us to be. And when we can't accept that, we create an image of what we think we should be, and then in the longer years we regret doing it. Look here, it's not the time for us to do that. We need to embrace who God has created us to be. Whether God has created us to be a man, embrace it. God has created you to be a woman, embrace it. There is nothing that you can change about you that will take away the biological concept of how God has created you. Once we start accepting who we are and what we're about, we are able to make changes, not only for the world, but especially for ourselves. So let's dive into it a little bit. So self-identity is the recognition of one's potential and qualities as an individual, especially in relation to social context, right? When you understand who you are as a person, everything becomes bigger for you. Everything becomes bigger for you and clearer and smoother for you. And you want to make sure that as you are getting into that process of life, that you're able to make the decisions that are going to be a lot more fruitful and beneficial to you. So I want you to think about some of these questions. Do you know who you are? A lot of us don't. And because we don't know who we are, we allow the world to dictate it. We allow family to dictate it. We allow friends to dictate it. We allow our sex to dictate it. And then at the ending of the day, we become something that we ourselves cannot live with. So the key to this is understanding who you are, embracing who you are, and walking in that authority. How do you speak to yourself? Can I share with you how I speak over myself? I get up in the morning and I say, girl, you look good. Yeah. Girl, your body look good. You're smart. You're beautiful. You're the head, not the tail. You're above, not beneath. God has favor over your life, favor over your children's life. Wealth and riches are in your home. I speak the things that I want to see come to fruition in my life. I am strong. I am healthy. I am a businesswoman. I have opportunities coming from the north, south, east, and west. I try every single day to speak life over myself. Why? Because if I don't speak life, death is going to come. And I don't mean physical death, right? Because physical death takes out everything. I'm talking about emotional death, spiritual death. And I believe that those type of death are worse than physical. Because when you're dead, you don't know nothing. But when you die spiritually, or you're dying emotionally, depression seeps in, all different type of things seep in, and then you're wondering, why am I here? How do you speak about yourself around other people? You know, this is one such important key that we have to understand, right? If you don't speak And I'm not talking about being cocky, and I'm not talking about being selfish, and I'm not talking about being conceited. I'm talking about taking the opportunity to make sure that you own you, that you stand on the promises of God, excuse me, concerning you, that you embrace every fiber of your being, knowing that there's greatness in you. There is greatness in you, and nobody can take that away from you. And that is what you need to own, no matter what the situation, no matter how it seems. Own that there's greatness in you, and the plan that God has for you will come to fruition. But if you don't walk in that authority, somebody's going to dictate for you. So just start by loving you, start by identifying the different things that you need to be able to shower yourselves with, bring to fruition, do what is necessary so that you can move from where you are to where you need to be. Y'all, listen, while we're at the end of the 7 keys to self-love, this is not the end. I will definitely be sharing more information, and I hope that you can use this information to uplift and build yourself as you go through the different phases and seasons in life. So let's get to it. So the 7th key is self-value, right? You got to believe in yourself. So self-value is the driving vehicle that allows us to walk the walk and act in ways that align with what you value. So what do you value? I want you to think about that for a minute, right? Because this sometimes this is the thing that kind of gets us. I know it got me because I had to really step back and think about what is it that I value. So let's get into a few questions. What do you value? How do you measure your self-worth? And how much do you value yourself? What do you value in life? Perfect example. Do you value clothing, cars, houses? What do you value? Because if you value things that are vain and vanity, things like that are gonna just sip away. We see the time that we're living in. It's just gonna be blown away like the draft in the wind. So what do you value? Do you value your mental health? Do you value your well-being? Do you value your character? Do you value your time? Do you value your worth as an individual? So you have to decide what you value as a person, right? And make sure that you are working on those things that you value from a positive perspective to lift you, not to tear other people down. Because sometimes when we're elevated to another level, we forget where we're coming from. Not to value things that, oh, I have money now, so I don't need certain type of people around me. No, the things that you value should make you a better person, should make you a greater person, a more loving, kinder type of person, right? So we have to look at the things that we value. And how do you measure your self-worth? So when you understand the things that you value and you look at your self-worth, we're not talking about money, uh, the worth of money or what you value in from that perspective. And when we talk about value, it's a holistic thing. So money is included, but we're not looking at it from that perspective right now. So when we talk about how do you measure your self-worth, you want to really kind of dissect that and understand it in increments, right? You're looking at it from a holistic perspective. If you're going to look at it from a financial perspective, you have to look at it from a spiritual and a mental perspective, as well as a physical perspective. You have to dissect it from all areas and look at your self-worth from that perspective, right? Because if you don't understand what your self-worth is and how you value it, then what's going to happen, again, people are going to tell you what your self-worth is and how you should value it, and it's not going to be favorable to you. And it comes back down into how much do you value yourself? How much do you value yourself? Baby, let me tell you something. If you don't value you, nobody else will. If you don't love you, nobody else will. And for me, I know I had to go through 3 marriages to figure this out because I didn't know. And people might look down on me and say, you were married 3 times. That's not right, whatever the situation. But how many men have you slept with? How many women have you slept with? At least mine was in the confines of a marriage. And it's not to be justified, but don't judge people because you don't understand their situation. Right, we're going to move away from that judgmental type of levity and move into the context of, let me figure out what happened with this person or how this person got to where they got to and why they made the choices that they did. And I just want you guys to understand that when you learn to love you, you make better decisions. You do not compromise. You do not settle for things that come and say, oh, God told me you were my wife, and you believe it. Because that was one of my truths. Oh, God told me you were my wife. And the first time I saw you, and I believed it because I didn't understand who I was, and I didn't understand how to worth and navigate my worth. And I had no self-esteem. And it wasn't a case where I was taking myself and throwing from the north, south, east, and west. No, I just within me, I didn't believe in myself. I doubted myself because things weren't aligning and I felt like I wasn't good enough. And even right now, God has me in a position with the fact that I'm a doctor. From a scholastic perspective, from a scholastic perspective, but yet still, I still have the credentials and I have not gotten a job that can match that. And I've been searching for jobs for a very long time. But I do have an organization where I work with Black women and men who are still dealing with remnants of trauma. And I believe that's where God wants me to be, as He has led me to do this, sharing my business all out there in the public, reminding me that what you have gone through doesn't belong to you. So it's not your business, it's my business, so share it. So I just want you guys to understand that don't be afraid and be ashamed to use your voice. Your voice may save the life of somebody. Your voice may help somebody out of the situation that they're in. So be encouraged, and do it. You don't need anything specific or whatever. You have a phone, you have a tablet, share, encourage somebody, empower somebody, because that's what we're called to do as children of God, right? So share some love on yourself, learn to love on yourself. And I hope you can use these tools to take you from where you are to the next level. Until then, definitely subscribe, like the video if you choose to, share it with somebody who may need it. Until we meet again, I will see you.